They weren't given enough rifles, so they turned their shovels into blades. In World War II, some of the most dangerous weapons didn't come from factories or supply depots. They came from desperation, from cold hands and hungry minds that refused to surrender. With enemy lines closing in, bunkers collapsing, and cities burning to their foundations, soldiers and civilians reached for what was already in their pockets: their kitchens, their trenches, cans, wires, soap, boots, bottles, cloth, bone. Ordinary scraps reshaped into silent instruments of survival and resistance. Some of these improvised weapons were banned after the war. Others were never written into manuals, never admitted publicly, whispered only between fighters who lived through those impossible nights. None of them were trained for this. They were forced into it. Because when everything broke and no help was coming, the only path left was to turn the familiar into the unthinkable. Soldiers on the frozen Eastern Front discovered that the simplest tool could become a lifeline. Their entrenching shovels, meant for digging frozen earth, were sharpened on rocks and scrap metal until their edges gleamed like knives. In the bitter cold, when rifles jammed or ammunition froze, these crude blades delivered the only strike that mattered. A gunshot revealed your position, but a shovel strike left only silence. One man standing and one man falling. Even German troops began sharpening theirs, some so effectively that factories disguised sharpened spades as ordinary tools. And so, a weapon that was never meant to be a weapon became one of the most feared instruments of close-quarters combat. Elsewhere, fire became the equalizer. A glass bottle, a rag, a splash of fuel, that was all the defenders of Finland had when Soviet armor approached in 1939. Yet those simple firebombs, named with cutting irony after Soviet Minister Molotov, turned into tank killers. Resistance groups across Europe copied the idea, filling bottles with gasoline, kerosene, tar, even alcohol when supplies ran thin. Phosphorus mixtures made them ignite on impact, from rooftops and alleyways and forest shadows. These makeshift bombs brought armored columns to a halt, proving that a scrap of cloth and a bottle of fire could change the odds. For those who couldn't fight, survival depended on buying mere seconds earned by sardine-can trip mines hidden along mountain paths and village roads. Built from flattened tins, match-head powder, nails, and wire. These traps didn't need to kill. They only needed to startle, to warn, to stall. A single crack of metal and flame in the dark was enough to send patrols scattering and give resistance fighters the precious moments needed to escape. From food waste came a lifeline. In prison camps and occupied cities, weapons were disguised as the ordinary. A pen in your pocket might not have been a pen at all, but a tiny single-shot gun, just a tube, a spring, a nail. Crude, almost laughably simple, yet powerful enough at close range to take down a guard and seize a proper weapon. These improvised pistols slipped through searches, hidden in sleeves, books, or jacket linings. Intelligence agencies later studied them, understanding the genius of a weapon that didn't look like one. And sometimes, even food became a trap. In Poland and Greece, resistance fighters hollowed out loaves of bread and filled them with powder, nails, and screws. They were carried in baskets, delivered in rations, hidden in plain sight. Housewives, priests, and children moved them through the streets, blending them into daily life until the moment they detonated. The blast was devastating, but the real impact was psychological proof that even something as innocent as a loaf of bread could strike terror into the occupying forces. Beauty itself became a lure. In abandoned homes across France, resistant saboteurs learned that German soldiers could not resist touching a piano key or opening a music box. So they wired these objects with explosives. One note, one idle moment of curiosity, and the room erupted. Radios, picture frames, pianos, anything aesthetically harmless became a quiet threat. The message was clear. Nothing was safe, not even art. And under the watchful eyes of the dead, entire supply lines survived. Weapons, radios, food, and coded messages were buried beneath tombstones across Eastern Europe. Cemeteries became secret armories where patrols rarely searched. Children memorized symbols carved into stone. Caretakers smuggled crates in at night. Families guarded hiding spots, passed down in whispers. German barracks were sometimes built just meters away, never realizing the lifeline of their enemy lay beneath their feet. When paper maps became liabilities, couriers memorized routes, burned the documents, and traveled with nothing but memory to guide them. Some hid directions within songs and rhymes. Others used herbs. Time to Macfane sent trails that faded within hours, but lasted long enough for a courier to find their path. If captured, all that remained were ashes in their pockets, and a map stored in the human mind. Even clothing became weaponry. Fighters embedded razor blades and shards of glass into the soles of their boots, blackened with soot so they wouldn't glint. A single kick or stomp could disable an enemy quietly and instantly. These makeshift weapons passed every checkpoint unnoticed, turning every step into a hidden threat. And when grenades ran out, soap became their substitute. Hollowed bars packed with powder and fuse cord, then resealed so convincingly that guards never suspected a thing. Carried in hygiene kits, they could slip into bunkers, trucks, or supply caches without raising suspicion. When they detonated, they caused enough damage to wound, disable, or destroy. Something meant to clean became something meant to survive. These weren't tricks. They weren't clever inventions made for manuals or movies. They were acts of necessity and source, born from starvation, fear, and resolve. They remind us that World War II wasn't fought only with tanks, warplanes, and manufactured weapons. It was fought with sharpened shovels, burning bottles, hollowed bread, razor-lined boots, and soap packed with explosive powder. It was fought with whatever people could shape with their hands. These forgotten methods are lessons in resilience, in adaptation, in knowing how to create something from almost nothing when the world around you collapses. Today, we live in comfort, but comfort is fragile. The lights, the food, the water, none of it is guaranteed. What endures is human ingenuity, the same spark that kept people alive decades ago in a world at war. So remember these stories, share them, study them, because the forgotten skills of the past might one day become the survival tools of the future.